The stars looked different this far from Earth. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human ship Defiance and watched the strange constellations through the main window. After 6 months of traveling through deep space, he still felt amazed by how vast the universe was. "Captain, we're getting something on the long-range sensors," said Lisa Carter from her science station. She was the ship's chief science officer and had been with Morrison for 3 years. Her voice carried excitement. "It looks like artificial structures about 2 light hours away." Morrison walked over to her station. The crew had been searching for signs of alien life for months without finding anything. Now they might have found their first real evidence that humans were not alone in the galaxy. "What kind of structures?" Morrison asked. "Large ones, much bigger than anything we humans have built. The computer thinks they might be space stations or maybe even cities floating in space." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls as she gathered more information. Ryan Brooks, the ship's tactical officer, looked up from his station. "Captain, should I ready our weapons? We don't know if these aliens are friendly." "No weapons yet," Morrison said firmly. "We came here to make friends, not enemies. Keep scanning, but stay ready." Amy Rodriguez sat at the communication station, trying to pick up any alien signals. She had learned 12 human languages and hoped that would help her understand alien speech. "I'm getting some transmissions, Captain. They're using very complex patterns. This might take time to figure out." The Defiance moved closer to the alien structures. Through the main screen, the crew could see massive metal constructions that looked like cities floating in the darkness of space. Lights moved along the surfaces and smaller ships flew between the structures like busy insects. "My God," whispered Lisa. "There must be millions of them living there." Morrison felt his heart beating faster. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. First contact with an alien civilization. Everything they did in the next few hours could change the future of both species. "Amy, can you send a basic mathematical sequence? Something simple to show we're intelligent beings trying to communicate." "Already working on it, Captain." Amy's hands moved over her controls, sending prime numbers and basic mathematical relationships. They waited. Space around them seemed to hold its breath. Then Amy's station lit up with incoming signals. "They're responding. The signal is getting stronger. I think they're sending ships toward us." On the main screen, several alien vessels appeared. They were sleek and dark, much larger than the Defiance. Strange symbols glowed along their hulls, and they moved with a smooth grace that human ships could not match. "Incoming transmission," Amy announced. It's in our language. Somehow they learned English from our signals." A deep voice filled the bridge. The words came slowly, as if the speaker was not used to human speech. "Human vessel, you will identify yourselves. State your purpose in Zephyrian space." Morrison stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Defiance. We come in peace seeking friendship and knowledge. We mean no harm to your people." There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again, colder this time. "I am War Prime Kethvar of the Zephyrian Collective. You humans are unknown to us. You will follow our ships to the command station for inspection." Morrison looked at his crew. Lisa seemed worried. Ryan had his hand near the weapons controls. Amy was trying to keep the communication clear. "We will follow," Morrison said. "But we request that this meeting be peaceful. We have much to offer, each other." The alien ships surrounded the Defiance and guided it toward the largest space station. As they got closer, Morrison could see how advanced the Zephyrian technology was. Their ships moved without visible engines. Their stations were built with materials that seemed to bend light around them. "Captain," Lisa whispered, "their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Look at those energy readings." The docking process was smooth. The Zephyrians had designed their station to accommodate different types of ships. Soon Morrison found himself walking through an airlock into the alien station with Lisa and Amy beside him. The Zephyrians were tall, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. They wore dark robes that seemed to flow like liquid. Their faces had sharp features and large eyes that glowed with inner light. War Prime Kethvar was the tallest of them all. Humans, Kethvar said as he looked down at Morrison. You are smaller than we expected. Your technology is primitive. Your ship barely deserves the name. Morrison kept his voice calm and friendly. We may be different, but we hope to learn from each other. Humans have always believed that diversity makes us all stronger. Kethvar's glowing eyes narrowed. The Zephyrian Collective has ruled this part of space for 1,000 years. We have conquered 17 different species. All have submitted to our superior ways. We're not here to submit or conquer, Morrison said. We're explorers and scientists. We want to share knowledge and build friendship. Something in Morrison's words seemed to anger the War Prime. His forearms moved in sharp gestures, and he spoke rapidly to the other Zephyrians in their own language. Your words are the words of weakness, Kethvar said finally. In our culture, the strong rule and the weak serve. There is no middle ground. Morrison tried to explain human values, but he could see that the Zephyrians viewed kindness as weakness and cooperation as failure. The meeting was not going as he had hoped. Then everything went wrong. Lisa was trying to record the meeting with a small device. To humans, this was normal scientific procedure. But when the Zephyrians saw the device, they reacted with fury. Spy. Equipment, one of them shouted. The humans are recording our secrets. No, wait, Morrison said, but it was too late. Kethvar's voice boomed through the station. This is an act of war. Humans are enemies of the collective. Before Morrison could explain, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The peaceful first contact had become a disaster, and Morrison realized that humanity might have just made the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy. War Prime Kethvar stood in the command center of his flagship and studied the reports about humans. The information his scouts had gathered made him feel confident about the coming war. These creatures called humans seemed weak and disorganized. Show me their technology again, he ordered his intelligence officer, Sub-Commander Thexra. The holographic display showed images of human ships and weapons. Kethvar saw crude metal vessels that moved slowly through space. Their weapons were simple, projectile systems and basic energy beams. Compared to Zephyrian technology, human equipment looked like toys made by children. Their largest ships are only half the size of our smallest fighters, Thexra reported. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Their armor is thin metal that our weapons will cut through like air. Kethvar nodded with satisfaction. What about their military organization? Very poor, War Prime. They have no unified command structure. Each human colony makes its own decisions. They argue constantly among themselves. They show no discipline or proper military thinking. Excellent. How many ships do they have? Perhaps 200 combat vessels in total. Most are converted, cargo ships with weapons attached. We have over 3,000 warships ready for battle. Kethvar felt pleased. The Zephyrian Collective had conquered 17 species over the past 1,000 years. Each conquest had followed the same pattern. First, they would study the enemy and find their weaknesses. Then they would attack with overwhelming force. Finally, the defeated species would surrender and accept Zephyrian rule. Humans would be no different. In fact, they seemed weaker than most species the collective had faced before. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Patricia Hayes sat in the emergency meeting room deep under the planet's surface. Around the table were the most important military and political leaders of humanity. The news from Captain Morrison's mission had reached Earth 3 days ago, and now they had to prepare for war. How much time do we have? Asked President Martinez Colonel. Ben Parker, the military strategist, checked his reports. Our long-range sensors show Zephyrian ships moving toward our outer colonies. They're not moving at full speed, which suggests they don't see us as a serious threat. We estimate 6 weeks before they reach our first settlements. Dr. Helen Cross, head of Advanced Weapons Research, leaned forward. That might be enough time if we act quickly. We have several projects that weren't supposed to be ready for years, but we can rush them into production. What kind of projects? Admiral Hayes asked. Adaptive AI combat systems, improved stealth technology, and weapons designed to exploit weaknesses we've found in alien shield technology. The problem is we've never tested them in real combat. President Martinez looked worried. Are you saying we have to bet humanity's survival on untested weapons? Not just weapons, Colonel Parker said. We have advantages the Zephyrians don't know about. Our intelligence suggests they've studied us, but they've only seen what we wanted them to see. Admiral Hayes stood up and walked to the large display, screen showing the galaxy. Red markers showed Zephyrian territory, which covered a huge area of space. Blue markers showed human colonies, which looked tiny in comparison. Explain what you mean, she said. The Zephyrians think they understand human warfare because they've observed our training exercises and public military displays, but they don't know about our classified programs. They don't understand how humans really fight when our survival is threatened. Dr. Cross nodded in agreement. Every species they've conquered before fought according to traditional military rules. Honor codes, formal battles, predictable tactics, but humans learned warfare in a different school. What school? The president asked. Earth, Colonel Parker replied simply. We spent thousands of years fighting each other. We learned that survival matters more than honor. We learned to adapt, to use every advantage, to think creatively when facing stronger enemies. Back in space, the Zephyrian fleet moved toward human territory with casual confidence. War Prime Kethvar had decided to start with the smallest human colonies. He would destroy them one by one, letting fear spread through human space before moving on to their major worlds. His first target was the mining colony on Kepler 442b. According to his intelligence, it had only 50,000 humans and no military defenses worth mentioning. It would be an easy way to begin the conquest. The Zephyrian attack fleet arrived at Kepler 442b, expecting to find frightened colonists ready to surrender. Instead, they found something that confused them. The human colony was still there, but it had changed. Strange energy signatures came from the surface. New defensive structures had appeared almost overnight. War Prime, reported his tactical officer, the humans have modified their colony. We're detecting weapon systems we don't recognize. Kethvar felt annoyed rather than worried. Impossible. Our intelligence shows they have no advanced weapons. Attack immediately. The Zephyrian ships moved forward, but the battle did not go as expected. Human weapons fired from hidden positions. The colonists had turned mining equipment into weapons. Cargo ships appeared from behind asteroids, moving in patterns that made no sense according to military doctrine. Most surprising of all, the humans fought with a desperation and creativity that shocked the Zephyrians. They used tactics that were considered dishonorable by collective standards. They attacked supply ships. They used the colony's industrial equipment as weapons. They even rammed damaged ships into Zephyrian vessels. After 6 hours of fighting, Kethvar had to retreat. He had lost 12 ships and damaged many others. The human colony was still intact. How is this possible? He demanded of his officers. They are primitives with inferior technology. War Prime, Thexra said carefully. Perhaps our intelligence was incomplete. The humans fight differently than other species we have encountered. Kethvar's anger grew. Different how? They do not follow proper military procedures. They use any method available to them. They show no concern for honor or tradition in combat. You mean they fight like animals? No, War Prime. They fight like survivors. Kethvar stared at the tactical display showing the failed attack. For the first time in his long military career, he felt uncertain. Maybe the humans were more dangerous than he had thought. But his pride would not let him admit this possibility. The Zephyrian collective had never failed to conquer an enemy. They would not fail now. Prepare the main fleet, he ordered. We will show these humans what real military power looks like. His officers hurried to carry out the command, but several of them exchanged worried glances. The easy conquest they had expected was becoming something else entirely. Tony Phillips wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked under the hull of the cargo ship Morning Star. 3 weeks ago, this vessel had been carrying grain between colonies. Now Tony was turning it into a warship that could fight Zephyrian forces. Hand me that plasma welder, he called to his assistant. Around him, dozens of other engineers worked on similar projects in the orbital shipyard above Mars. Every civilian ship that could fly was being converted for battle. "Tony, you need to see this," said Maria Santos, another engineer. She held up a piece of Zephyrian technology that human forces had recovered from the battle at Kepler 442b. "I think I figured out how their shields work." Tony crawled out from under the ship and examined the alien device. It was smaller than a human fist but contained technology that seemed impossible. "What did you find?" "Their shields are incredibly strong, but they have a weakness. They're designed to stop energy weapons and large projectiles, but they don't handle multiple small impacts very well." "What do you mean?" Maria smiled. "Remember those old Earth weapons called shotguns? They fired many small pellets instead of one big bullet. I think we can use the same idea." Tony's eyes lit up with understanding. "Scatter shot weapons. Fire hundreds of small projectiles at once." "Exactly. Their shields can stop a missile, but they can't stop 1,000 small pieces of metal flying at high speed." Across the solar system, similar discoveries were happening. Human engineers and scientists were working around the clock to find ways to fight an enemy with superior technology. They couldn't match Zephyrian firepower, but they could find weaknesses to exploit. On the bridge of the converted cargo ship Iron Will, Captain Sarah Kim studied the tactical display. She had been a civilian pilot for 10 years before the war started. Now she commanded a squadron of 12 converted ships, all crewed by volunteers who had never fought in space before. "Captain," called her communications officer, "we're getting reports from Scout Group 7. Zephyrian forces are moving toward the Titan colony." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Titan had 2 million colonists, including her own sister and her family. The Zephyrians had already destroyed 3 smaller colonies, and each attack had been more brutal than the last. "How long until they arrive?" 18 hours, Captain." Sarah looked at her crew. They were farmers, miners, teachers, and shopkeepers who had volunteered to fight. None of them were trained soldiers, but they all understood what would happen if the Zephyrians weren't stopped. "Set course for Titan," she ordered, "and send a message to all ships in the squadron. Tell them it's time to see if our new tactics work." Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the human fleet. After the disaster of first contact, he had been promoted and given command of humanity's defense forces. The weight of responsibility felt enormous. "Status report," he requested. Colonel Parker approached with a datapad. "We have 67 converted ships ready for combat. Another 100 are still being modified. Our new weapons are untested, but the simulations look promising." "What about the Zephyrian fleet?" "They're moving in 3 main groups. The largest is heading for Titan. The other 2 are attacking mining stations in the belt." Dr. Cross joined them. "Admiral, we've finished installing the new AI combat systems. They should give our ships a significant advantage in battle coordination." Morrison nodded. The AI systems were humanity's secret weapon. While Zephyrian ships were powerful, they relied on traditional command structures. Each ship waited for orders from above before acting. But human ships with AI assistance could think and react independently, working together like a flock of birds or a school of fish. "There's something else," Dr. Cross continued. "We've been monitoring Zephyrian communications. They still don't understand what they're fighting." "What do you mean?" "They keep referring to us as dishonorable and primitive. They think our tactics are signs of weakness rather than strength. They don't realize that humans have been preparing for this kind of war for our entire history." Morrison thought about human history. Thousands of years of warfare had taught his species hard lessons. They had learned that survival mattered more than pride. They had learned to use every advantage, no matter how small. They had learned to adapt quickly when facing stronger enemies. The Zephyrians had conquered 17 species, but those species had fought according to traditional rules. They had faced their enemies in honorable combat, ship against ship, following ancient codes of warfare. Humans had no such codes. They fought to win. The battle for Titan began at 800 hours. Zephyrian forces arrived expecting another easy victory. They found Captain Kim's squadron waiting for them. The human ships moved in ways that confused the Zephyrians. Instead of forming battle lines like proper warships, they scattered and attacked from multiple directions. They used the asteroid field around Titan as cover, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. "Fire scatter shot weapons," Sarah ordered. The Morningstar and its sister ships unleashed clouds of small projectiles. Zephyrian shields designed to stop missiles and energy beams couldn't handle the storm of tiny metal fragments. Several alien ships took damage as the projectiles punched through their defenses. "Impossible!" War Prime Kethvar shouted from his flagship. "How are primitive weapons penetrating our shields?" His tactical officer looked confused. "The humans are using multiple small projectiles instead of single large ones. Our shields are not designed for this type of attack." Kethvar felt anger rising in his chest. First the mining colony, now this. The humans were not fighting like a proper military force. They used tricks and deception instead of honest combat. "All ships concentrate fire on the largest human vessel," he ordered. But the human ships didn't stay still long enough to be targeted effectively. They moved constantly, using hit-and-run tactics that frustrated the Zephyrian gunners. When the aliens tried to pursue one ship, others would attack from behind. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Zephyrians had lost 8 ships and damaged many others. The human squadron had lost only 2 vessels, and Titan remained safe. Kethvar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His forces had superior technology, larger ships, and more firepower. Yet somehow these primitive humans had defeated him again. "War Prime," his intelligence officer reported. "We're receiving similar reports from the other battle groups. Human forces are using unexpected tactics everywhere. They're not fighting like any species we've encountered before." Kethvar realized that his easy conquest was becoming a real war, but his pride still would not let him admit that humans might be dangerous opponents. "Send for reinforcements," he ordered. "We will crush these insects with overwhelming force." But, as he gave the order, Kethvar felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career. For the first time, he was not certain of victory. The space around New Geneva looked like a graveyard of ships. Broken pieces of metal floated in the darkness, some still glowing from recent explosions. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship Retribution and watched the final Zephyrian assault falling apart. War Prime Kethvar had brought his entire remaining fleet to this battle. Over 1,000 ships had attacked the human fortress world, expecting to crush human resistance once and for all. Instead, they had flown into the most carefully planned trap in military history. "Status report," Morrison requested. "Enemy fleet is down to 300 operational ships," reported his tactical officer. "They're trying to retreat, but our pursuit squadrons are cutting off their escape routes." Morrison nodded. The humans had learned much about Zephyrian tactics during the past 6 months of war. The aliens always attacked in the same patterns, always used the same formations, always followed the same rigid procedures. This predictability had become their weakness. On the bridge of his damaged flagship, War Prime Kethvar stared at the tactical display with growing horror. His mighty fleet was being destroyed by creatures he had dismissed as primitive animals. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were being picked apart by converted cargo vessels and mining ships. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We have superior weapons, superior armor, superior everything." His surviving officers looked at each other with fear in their eyes. None of them wanted to tell their commander the truth, but the evidence was clear on every screen around them. "War Prime," his intelligence officer said carefully. "The humans fight differently than any species we have encountered. They do not follow standard military doctrine. Explain. They use deception, surprise attacks, and coordinated group tactics. Their ships work together like a single organism with many parts. Our ships wait for orders from command. Their ships think and act independently while still working toward the same goal." Kethvar felt rage building inside him. "You are saying they fight without honor, without proper military structure?" "Yes, War Prime. But their methods are very effective." The truth was even worse than his officers realized. The humans had spent months studying captured Zephyrian equipment and prisoners. They had learned how Zephyrian command systems worked, how their ships communicated, and how their officers thought. Dr. Helen Cross had led a team of scientists who discovered that Zephyrian military doctrine was based on thousands of years of tradition. They never changed their tactics because change was considered dishonorable. They believed that superior technology and discipline would always defeat inferior opponents. But humans had no such traditions limiting their thinking. When they found that direct attacks didn't work, they tried indirect approaches. When energy weapons proved ineffective, they developed kinetic alternatives. When single ships were too weak, they coordinated dozens of vessels to work as one. Marine Commander Kate Sullivan led her troops through the corridors of a captured Zephyrian cruiser. The boarding action had been brutal, but her soldiers had adapted quickly to fighting in alien environments. "Clear the next section," she ordered over her radio. "Remember, these aliens have 4 arms, but they're not used to close combat. Stay mobile and use your training." The Zephyrians were excellent space warriors, but they had never faced human infantry tactics. Human soldiers had been trained in fighting techniques developed over centuries of warfare on Earth. They knew how to fight in tight spaces, how to use cover effectively, and how to work as small teams. Kate's squad moved through the alien ship like shadows. The Zephyrians, used to formal battles with clear rules, had no idea how to respond to human guerrilla tactics. Back on the Retribution's bridge, Morrison received reports from across the battlefield. Human forces were winning on every front, but not because they had better weapons or stronger ships. They were winning because they thought differently about warfare itself. "Admiral," his communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian flagship. War Prime Kethvar wants to speak with you." Morrison straightened his uniform. This was the moment he had been preparing for since the war began. "Put him on screen." The image of War Prime Kethvar appeared on the main display. The alien leader looked beaten and confused. His proud bearing was gone, replaced by something Morrison had never expected to see in a Zephyrian commander: uncertainty. "Human Admiral," Kethvar said, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion, "I demand to know how you have achieved this victory. Your species is primitive. Your technology is inferior. Your ships are converted civilian vessels. How have you defeated the mighty Zephyrian collective?" Morrison looked at the alien commander for a long moment before responding. He thought about all the human colonies that had been destroyed, all the innocent people who had died because the Zephyrians believed might made right. "You want to know how we won?" Morrison said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "You studied our ships and our weapons, but you never studied us. You thought you understood human warfare because you watched our training exercises and military parades." Kethvar's glowing eyes narrowed. "Your military displays showed weakness and disorder. Those displays showed you what we wanted you to see," Morrison replied. "But you never saw what humans are really like when our survival is threatened. You never learned about our real history." "What history?" Morrison stepped closer to the screen. "We spent 10,000 years learning how to fight on a world where everything wanted to kill us. We fought ice ages, predators, diseases, and each other. We learned that survival requires adaptation, innovation, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to protect our people. That is not honorable warfare." "Honor?" Morrison's voice grew cold. "You attack civilian colonies and call it honorable. You demand surrender from people who never threatened you and call it proper military procedure. You want to know what real honor looks like?" Kethvar remained silent, waiting for the answer. Morrison leaned forward, his eyes burning with intensity. "Real honor is protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Real strength is knowing when to show mercy to a defeated enemy. And when someone threatens everything we hold dear, when someone demands that we surrender or die." The human admiral's voice dropped to a deadly whisper that carried more threat than any shout could convey. "You want war? Then face destruction." The words hit Kethvar like a physical blow. In that moment, he finally understood what his people had awakened. Humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something entirely different, something the Zephyrian collective had never encountered in 1,000 years of warfare. They were survivors who had learned that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to become very, very good at war. War Prime Kethvar sat in his command chair and stared at the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. Only 50 ships remained from the 1,000 that had attacked New Geneva. His officers waited in silence, afraid to speak. The Great Zephyrian Collective, rulers of 17 conquered species, had been defeated by a race they had called primitive. War Prime, his communications officer said quietly, "Admiral Morrison is requesting your response to his terms." Kethavar closed his glowing eyes. The human terms were not what he had expected. Any other species would have demanded complete surrender, slavery, or total destruction. But Morrison had offered something different, something that confused the Zephyrian commander more than defeat itself. The humans wanted peace, not submission, not conquest, just an end to the fighting and a promise that the Zephyrians would respect human territory. In return, they offered medical aid for wounded Zephyrian soldiers and safe passage home for the surviving ships. "They could destroy us completely," Kethavar said to his remaining officers. "Why do they offer mercy?" His intelligence officer, Sub-Commander Thexera, looked at her reports. "War Prime, I have been studying human culture during the battle. I believe I understand their thinking." "Explain." "Humans do not fight for conquest or glory. They fight only for survival and protection. When the threat is removed, they prefer to build rather than destroy." Kethavar found this concept difficult to understand. In Zephyrian culture, victory meant domination. The strong ruled the weak. It had always been this way. "Are you saying they fight so well because they do not enjoy fighting?" "Yes, War Prime. They are very good at war because they understand its true cost. They know that even victory brings suffering." On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Morrison waited for the Zephyrian response. His officers stood ready for any possibility. The aliens might choose to fight to the death rather than accept defeat, or they might try one final desperate attack. "Admiral," Dr. Cross said, "I'm monitoring Zephyrian communications. They're debating among themselves. Some want to continue fighting, but most seem to realize it's hopeless." Morrison nodded. He understood the alien commander's position. Kethavar had spent his entire life believing in Zephyrian superiority. Accepting defeat from humans must feel impossible. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "incoming transmission from the Zephyrian flagship." "Put it through." Kethavar's image appeared on the screen. The alien leader looked older somehow, as if the battle had aged him years in a single day. "Admiral Morrison," Kethavar said slowly, "I accept your terms. The Zephyrian fleet will withdraw from human space and will not return." Morrison felt relief wash over him. The war was finally over, but he also felt something unexpected, sympathy for his defeated enemy. "War Prime," Morrison said, "I want you to understand something. Humans don't hate the Zephyrian people. We fought because you gave us no choice, but we take no pleasure in your defeat." Kethavar's forearms moved in a gesture Morrison had learned meant confusion. "I do not understand. We are your enemies. We destroyed your colonies. We killed your people." "Yes, you did, and we will not forget that. But revenge and justice are different things. We have defended ourselves and stopped your attacks. That is enough. Other species we have conquered begged for mercy when defeat came. You offer mercy when victory is yours. Why?" Morrison thought carefully before answering. "Because strength without wisdom is just destruction. Because today's enemy might become tomorrow's friend. And because..." He paused. "Because that's what it means to be human." The next few hours passed quietly as the Zephyrian ships prepared to leave. Human medical teams helped treat wounded aliens. Human engineers assisted with repairs to damaged Zephyrian vessels. The same humans who had fought desperately to survive now worked to help their former enemies return home safely. Captain Sarah Kim supervised the aid operations from her converted cargo ship. She watched human and Zephyrian crews working together, and felt amazed by how quickly attitudes could change. "Captain," her communications officer called, "we're getting a message from the Zephyrian cruiser Starforge. They want to thank our medical team personally." Sarah smiled. Perhaps this was how peace really began. not with treaties or ceremonies, but with small acts of kindness between former enemies. 3 months later, Admiral Morrison sat in his office on Mars and read reports from across human space. The war was over, but its effects continued to spread through the galaxy. Other alien species had watched the conflict with great interest. They had seen the mighty Zephyrian collective defeated by a previously unknown race. Now they wanted to meet these humans for themselves. Unlike the Zephyrians, these new species approached with respect rather than arrogance. They had learned an important lesson. Humans might look small and peaceful, but they were not to be underestimated. The Andromedan Trade Federation had sent diplomatic missions to several human colonies. The crystalline consciousness had offered to share scientific knowledge. Even the mysterious Void Walkers had made contact, something they rarely did with any species. Dr. Cross entered Morrison's office carrying a data pad. "Admiral, you need to see this. We're receiving applications from over 30 different species wanting to establish diplomatic relations." Morrison looked at the list with amazement. 6 months ago, humans had been alone in the galaxy. Now they were becoming the center of a new kind of interstellar community. "There's something else," Dr. Cross continued. "The Zephyrian Collective has sent an official ambassador. They want to establish trade agreements and cultural exchange programs." "Kethvar?" "No, someone new. A younger Zephyrian named Veltar who believes his people can learn from humans. Apparently, there's been a lot of debate in the collective about their old ways of thinking." Morrison smiled. Change was never easy, especially for a proud species, like the Zephyrians. But perhaps defeat had taught them something valuable about the difference between strength and wisdom. Later that day, Morrison stood on the observation deck of the space station and looked out at the stars. Human ships moved among vessels from a dozen different species. Alien diplomats walked through corridors alongside human scientists and engineers. Captain Jake Morrison, the explorer who had dreamed of peaceful first contact, had become Admiral. Morrison, the warrior who had saved his species from extinction, but now he was becoming something new again. A builder of the peace that would follow the war. The galaxy was a big place, full of wonders and dangers that humans had barely begun to discover. But they would face the future together with new friends, and old enemies who had learned to respect them. Because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, and they never stopped hoping that tomorrow could be better than today. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the alien world grow larger on the main screen. After 6 months of space travel, they had finally reached their destination. The planet below them was covered in blue oceans, with floating crystal cities that sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight. "Sir, we're getting signals from the surface," said Amy Parker from her communications station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as strange sounds filled the bridge. The sounds were like music mixed with whale songs, beautiful and haunting at the same time. Dr. Lisa Barnes looked up from her science station with excitement in her eyes. "Captain, these readings are incredible. The cities down there are actually floating on the water, and the energy signatures suggest they're powered by some kind of biological system." Commander Ryan Hayes, the ship's tactical officer, checked his weapons displays one more time. Everything was powered down as ordered. This was a peaceful mission, humanity's first real attempt to make friends with an alien species. No weapons, no threats, just open hands and hopeful hearts. "Take us into orbit, Ben," Jake told his engineer, Lieutenant Ben Clark. The ship moved smoothly through space, its engines humming quietly. 3 days later, Jake found himself in a small shuttle heading down to the planet's surface. The alien beings had agreed to meet them at one of their floating cities. As the shuttle broke through the clouds, Jake saw something that took his breath away. The city was like nothing humans had ever built. Crystal towers rose from the water, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of solid light. Gardens floated in the air around the buildings, filled with plants that glowed softly in colors Jake had never seen before. And everywhere, there, was music. The entire city was singing. The shuttle landed on a platform made of what looked like living coral. As Jake and his team stepped out, they were greeted by beings that were unlike anything in human imagination. They were tall and graceful, with smooth skin that changed colors like a rainbow. Their faces were kind and intelligent, with large eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. One of the beings stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice was like a gentle melody. Amy's translation device picked up the meaning. "Welcome, travelers, from the distant stars. I am called Harmony of Depths. We have been waiting for you." Jake removed his helmet and breathed the alien air for the first time. It was clean and sweet, filled with the scent of ocean and flowers. "I am Jake Morrison, captain of the human ship New Horizon. We come in peace, hoping to learn about your people and share knowledge of our own." Harmony of Depths smiled, and when she did, her skin glowed brighter. "Peace is the only song we know, Jake Morrison. Come, let us show you our world." The next few hours passed like a dream. The aliens, who called themselves the Vashti, took the humans through their incredible city. Everything was alive and growing. The buildings were not built but grown from living crystal that responded to the Vashti's songs. The gardens floated because the plants themselves could control gravity through their roots. Dr. Barnes was fascinated by everything she saw. "How do you make the crystals grow?" she asked a Vashti scientist named Current of Joy. "We sing to them," Current of Joy replied, her skin shifting to warm yellow colors that Amy's translator said meant happiness. "Every living thing has its own song. We learned long ago to hear these songs and sing along. When we sing together with the crystals, they grow in harmony with our needs." Ben Clark was amazed by their technology. The Vashti showed him power, systems that used the planet's own magnetic field combined with the bioelectricity of sea creatures. "No pollution, no waste," explained a young Vashti engineer named Depth Singer. "Everything gives to everything else. That is the way of harmony." Ryan Hayes found himself talking with Vashti who were interested in human history. They were shocked to learn about wars and conflicts, but not in a judgmental way. Instead, they wanted to understand how humans had learned to overcome these problems and reach for the stars. "Your species has known great pain," Harmony of Depths told Jake as they walked through a garden where the flowers sang in response to their footsteps. "Yet you did not let that pain destroy you. Instead, you used it to grow stronger and reach out to others. This is wisdom we can learn from." As the days passed, real friendships began to form. Jake spent long hours with Harmony of Depths, sharing stories of Earth's history and learning about the Vashti's ancient culture. The alien leader told him about their philosophy of living in harmony with all life, about their art and music that could heal both body and soul. Lisa Barnes worked closely with Vashti scientists, sharing human knowledge of medicine and biology, while learning about their incredible biotechnology. Together, they discovered ways to grow food that could adapt to any environment and medicines that could cure diseases by singing to the sick cells until they remembered how to be healthy. Amy Parker spent her time with Vashti linguists, developing better translation systems and learning the complex language of colors and sounds that the aliens used. She discovered that the Vashti didn't just talk with words. Their entire bodies were part of their communication, with skin colors and musical tones working together to create meaning. The Vashti were equally fascinated by human culture. They loved human music, especially the complex harmonies of Bach, and the emotional power of blues songs. They were amazed by human art and literature, by the way humans could create beauty even in the midst of struggle and pain. Ben Clark became close friends with several young Vashti engineers. Together they worked on improving both human and Vashti technology, finding ways to combine the best of both worlds. The Vashti taught him about organic technology that grew and healed itself, while he showed them human innovations in energy, storage, and space travel. After 2 months on the planet, Jake knew that this was the most important moment in human history. They had found not just intelligent life, but friends. True friends who cared about peace, beauty, and the welfare of all living things. The Vashti felt the same way. Harmony of Depths told Jake that their people had always believed they would someday meet other beings among the stars, beings who would share their love of harmony and growth. "You are the friends we have been singing for across the generations," she said, her skin glowing with deep blue colors that meant profound joy. Your arrival completes a song that began before our grandparents were born. As the time came for the New Horizon to return to Earth, 3 young Vashti volunteered to come with them as ambassadors. Melody of Stars, Current of Joy, and Depth Singer were excited to see Earth and meet more humans. The entire Vashti city came to see them off, singing a farewell song that made the crystal buildings ring like bells. Jake stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the beautiful planet grow smaller. Behind them, in the cargo hold were gifts from the Vashti, memory crystals containing their greatest music and scientific discoveries, seeds from their floating gardens, and samples of their healing crystals. Set course for Earth, he told Ben Clark. His voice was filled with pride and excitement. They were going home with the greatest news in human history. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and their new friends were everything they could have hoped for. The 3 Vashti ambassadors stood beside him, their skin glowing with anticipation. They were eager to see the blue world that had produced such remarkable beings, to meet the billions of humans who had created art and music and literature that moved their hearts. As the New Horizon jumped to faster than light speed, Jake Morrison smiled. The future had never looked brighter. Humanity and the Vashti would build something beautiful together, a friendship that would span the stars and bring peace to the galaxy. Behind them, the Vashti city continued its eternal song, now with new verses celebrating the arrival of their human friends and the bright future that lay ahead for both their peoples. 8 months later, the New Horizon was finally approaching the solar system. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the familiar stars grow brighter. Beside him, the 3 Vashti ambassadors pressed against the viewing windows, their skin glowing with excitement. "Soon we will see your beautiful Earth," said Melody of Stars, her colors shifting to bright gold. "We have dreamed of this moment for so long." Current of Joy hummed softly, a tune that made the ship's walls vibrate with harmony. "We cannot wait to meet more humans and share our songs with your people." Amy Parker was busy at her communications station, trying to contact Earth Control. "This is strange, Captain. I'm not getting any response from Earth Traffic Control. Let me try the Mars colonies." Jake frowned. It was unusual for Earth not to respond immediately. They had been sending messages ahead announcing their return, with the first alien ambassadors in human history. The whole solar system should be celebrating. "Still nothing from Mars, sir," Amy reported after several minutes. "I'm trying the asteroid mining stations now." Dr. Lisa Barnes looked up from her science station with worry in her eyes. "Captain, I'm not detecting any of the usual radio traffic from Earth. No television signals, no internet communications, nothing." A cold feeling began to grow in Jake's stomach. Something was very wrong. The solar system was too quiet, too empty of the constant chatter of human civilization. Ben Clark checked his navigation systems twice before speaking. "Sir, we're definitely in the right place. That's Earth ahead of us. But I'm not picking up any orbital traffic. No ships, no space stations responding." Ryan Hayes activated the ship's long-range sensors and went pale. "Captain, you need to see this." The main screen changed to show Earth, but it was not the blue and green world they remembered. The planet below them was brown and gray, with angry red spots that glowed like infected wounds. The polar ice caps were gone. The oceans looked black and wrong. "No," whispered Jake, his voice breaking. "This can't be real." The 3 Vashti ambassadors made sounds of horror and grief. Their skin turned dark gray, almost black. Depth Singer fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the psychic weight of what they were seeing. Amy's hands shook as she tried every emergency frequency she knew. "I'm getting automated distress signals, hundreds of them. They're all saying the same thing. The attacks began 6 months ago." 6 months ago. Just after the New Horizon had left the Vashti homeworld to return to Earth, Lisa Barnes ran every scan she could think of. The results were devastating. The atmosphere is full of radioactive particles. The oceans are boiling with nuclear fire. The temperature readings show that most of the surface was hit with energy weapons powerful enough to melt rock. Ben Clark's voice was barely a whisper. "The moon. Look at the moon." Earth's ancient companion was scarred with massive craters that had not been there before. Entire sections of the lunar surface had been blown away, leaving it looking like a broken egg. "Mars," Ryan said quietly, his tactical training helping him stay focused even as his heart broke. "Show me Mars." The red planet was worse. Something had cracked it open like a nut. The Great Canyon that had once been a marvel of planetary geology was now a gaping wound that went almost to the planet's core. The atmosphere was gone, blown away into space. Jake sank into his captain's chair as the full horror hit him. 8 billion people. Gone. All of them. His parents, his sister, his friends from the academy. The children who had sent drawings to space for the aliens to see. The old woman who had grown the roses he loved to smell when he was on Earth leave. All of them. Dead. "The weapon signatures," Lisa said, her scientific mind still working even as tears ran down her face. "I'm analyzing the energy patterns left in the debris fields." Amy was crying as she listened to the distress beacons. "They're mostly automated messages. But I found a few from people in the last moments. They're saying the attackers came without warning. Ships just appeared and started firing." "Captain." Lisa's voice was cold now, filled with a terrible understanding. "I know these weapon signatures. We've seen them before." Jake looked at her with dead eyes. "Who?" "The Kronak Empire. The energy patterns match exactly with the weapons. Data we recorded 3 years ago when we tried to negotiate with them. The Kronak." Jake remembered them well. A species of aggressive reptilian beings who had rejected human attempts at friendship. They had called humans weak and chaotic, unworthy of space travel. The negotiations had ended badly, with Kronak representatives stating that the galaxy would be better off without human interference. But no one had expected this. No one had thought they would commit complete genocide. Amy was monitoring more signals now, her face twisted with rage and grief. "Captain, I'm picking up Kronak military communications. They're celebrating." "What?" "They're broadcasting across their empire footage of the attacks. They turned the destruction of Earth into entertainment for their people." The main screen showed intercepted Kronak transmissions. Jake watched in horror as alien beings toasted with their strange drinks while images of burning cities played behind them. He saw Kronak commanders laughing as they showed trophies taken from human ships. Children's toys, wedding rings, family photographs. "They're calling it the cleansing of the weak species," Amy continued, her voice shaking with fury. "They're planning a victory celebration on their homeworld. A festival to celebrate wiping out humanity." Current of Joy made a sound that was like a scream and a song of mourning combined. The noise was so full of grief that it made the ship's hull ring like a bell. Melody of Stars had lost all her colors, her skin now a flat gray that meant despair, beyond words. Depth. Singer spoke for the first time since seeing Earth. Her voice was broken and hollow. "We felt it. When it happened. 6 months ago, we felt a great silence fall across the song of life. We thought it was just sadness for missing our new friends, but it was death. The death of 8 billion voices all at once." Jake stood up slowly. Around him, his crew was crying. Ryan Hayes, the tough military officer, had his head in his hands. Ben Clark was staring at the screen showing Earth's corpse, with empty eyes. Lisa Barnes was running calculations with mechanical precision, as if staying busy could keep the grief away. Amy Parker looked up from her station with red eyes. "Captain, I'm detecting a few human ships in deep space. Exploration vessels like us that haven't returned home yet. But not many. Maybe a dozen ships total. A few hundred people out of 8 billion. The last humans in the universe." Jake felt the weight of that knowledge settle on his shoulders like a mountain. They were all that was left of their species, all that remained of Earth's children. "The Kronak made one mistake," Jake said quietly, his voice colder than space itself. "What's that, sir?" Ryan asked. "They left some of us alive. The 3 Vashti." Ambassadors looked at him with their large, wise eyes. In those eyes, Jake saw something he had never expected to see from the peaceful aliens. Anger. deep, burning anger mixed with grief for their murdered friends. What do we do now, Jake Morrison? Harmony of Depths had taught Melody of Stars to ask when facing difficult decisions. Jake looked out at the dead world that had been his home, at the moon where his grandmother had worked before she died, at the space where Mars had once dreamed of human colonies full of children and laughter. Now, he said in a voice like winter, we make sure the Kronak learn what happens when you kill humanity's friends. The New Horizon turned away from Earth's grave and set course for dark space. Behind them, the solar system mourned in silence. Ahead of them lay a galaxy that had no idea what humanity was capable of when everything they loved was taken away. In the ship's corridors, 5 humans and 3 aliens began to plan something that would make the stars themselves tremble. Kronak wanted to celebrate their victory? Earth's last children would make sure that celebration became a funeral instead. The age of human diplomacy was over. The age of human vengeance had begun. The New Horizon drifted through empty space, far from any star or planet. Inside the ship, 6 beings sat around a table in what had once been the diplomatic meeting room. Now it felt more like a war council. Jake Morrison looked at each face, around the table. His crew had changed in the 3 weeks since they found Earth's grave. Ryan Hayes had dark circles under his eyes and spoke only when necessary. Ben Clark worked on the ship's systems with mechanical precision, never smiling anymore. Amy Parker spent her time listening to Kronak communications, her face twisted with hatred every time she heard them laugh about humanity's death. Dr. Lisa Barnes had changed the most. The kind scientist who had been so excited to study alien life now spent her days reading through classified military files, searching for weapons that could kill entire species. We need to face facts, Jake said quietly. 5 humans and 3. Vashti cannot fight an empire that spans dozens of star systems. If we try to attack them directly, we'll just die uselessly. Melody of Stars spoke up, her skin flickering with colors Jake had never seen before. Dark colors, angry colors. The Kronak think they have won completely. They believe all humans are dead. They do not know we exist. That's our advantage, Ryan said, his military mind already working. They're not looking for survivors. Their security is designed to stop armies, not ghosts. Current of Joy had been silent since they left Earth's system, but now she spoke in a voice like broken glass. In our culture, we have stories of the dark song. When someone commits a great evil, the universe itself demands balance. We never believed these stories were real. Maybe they weren't real before, said Depth Singer, her skin pulsing with strange patterns. But they are real now. Lisa Barnes opened a computer file on the table's display screen. I've been going through every classified project in our databases. Humanity developed some terrible weapons during our wars, things so dangerous that every government agreed to never use them. Jake looked at the list of weapon names on the screen. Most of them he had never heard of, but the descriptions made his blood run cold. Viruses that could target specific DNA, patterns, nanotechnology that could eat through any material, bombs that could make stars explode. These weapons were created by humans who understood war, Lisa continued. Humans who knew that sometimes you have to do terrible things to stop even worse things from happening. Ben Clark leaned forward. The ship's fabrication systems can build most of these weapons if we modify them. It won't be easy, but it's possible. Amy. Parker pulled up another screen showing Kronak communication intercepts. I've been studying their military structure. They're incredibly arrogant. They truly believe no other species can challenge them. Their security is designed to stop conventional attacks from other military empires, but not unconventional attacks from species they think are extinct, Ryan added. Jake stood up and walked to the room's window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kronak were celebrating the death of his world. They were laughing about children who would never grow up, about artists who would never create again, about lovers who had died in each other's arms. What kind of people are we becoming? He asked quietly. Melody of Stars joined him at the window. Her skin was now showing colors that meant determination mixed with sorrow. We are becoming what we must become to honor our friends. The Kronak made a choice when they destroyed Earth, said Current of Joy. They chose to be monsters. Now they must face the consequences of that choice. Depth Singer stood up, her body glowing with harmonics that made the ship's walls vibrate. Our people have lived in peace for thousands of years. We never harmed anyone. But you humans taught us something during our time together. What's that? Jake asked. You taught us that some things are worth fighting for. Love is worth fighting for. Friendship is worth fighting for. The memory of the dead is worth fighting for. Lisa Barnes activated another screen. I've found something interesting in the Kronak communications. They're planning a massive celebration on their homeworld. A victory festival to officially celebrate humanity's extinction. Amy nodded. It's scheduled for exactly 1 year after Earth's destruction. Every major Kronak leader will be there. Military commanders, politicians, cultural figures. The entire leadership of their empire in one place. How many? Ryan asked. According to their broadcasts, they expect over 50 million Kronak to attend. They're calling it the greatest celebration in their history. Jake turned back to the table. Then that's where we'll make our move. Not just to kill them, but to send a message to the entire galaxy. What kind of message? Ben asked. That there are some lines you never cross. That friendship is sacred. That if you hurt someone's friends, you will pay a price beyond imagination. Lisa pulled up the weapon files again. I've been working on something new. A combination of human, biotechnology and Vashti harmonic science. It won't just kill them. It will make them experience what they did to us. Explain, Jake said. A virus that causes the infected to experience the last moments of everyone who died on Earth. 8 billion deaths felt all at once. It won't kill them immediately, but it will drive them insane with the weight of what they've done. The room fell silent. Even Jake felt sick at the thought of such a weapon. Is that what we want to become? Amy asked quietly. Monsters like them? No, said Jake firmly. We'll never be monsters like them. Monsters kill for pleasure. We're doing this for justice, for memory, for love. Current of Joy began to sing softly, a melody that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. In our oldest stories, the universe has a way of balancing itself. Great. Evil calls forth great response. The Kronak have upset the balance of all things. We are the universe's answer to their evil, Melody of Stars said, her skin now showing colors of absolute certainty. Over the next several hours, they planned their war. It would not be a war of armies or fleets. It would be a war of shadows, of terror, of psychological destruction. They would turn the Kronak Empire's own arrogance against them. Ben Clark would modify the ship's systems, turning the New Horizon from an exploration vessel into something that could slip past any defense. Lisa Barnes would create weapons that would make the Kronak wish they had never heard of humanity. Amy Parker would wage information warfare, spreading fear and paranoia through Kronak communications. Ryan Hayes would plan their attacks with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a hunter. The three Vashti would contribute their advanced biotechnology and their knowledge of harmonic frequencies that could shatter minds and bodies alike. How long do we have? Jake asked. 9 months until their celebration, Amy replied. 9 months to prepare. Then we have 9 months to become something the galaxy has never seen before, Jake said. We'll be Earth's ghost, haunting every Kronak who had anything to do with our world's death. Depth Singer stood up, her body glowing with new purpose. We will sing the dark song together, humans and Vashti as one. We will teach the galaxy that friendship is sacred, and those who destroy it will face consequences beyond their worst nightmares. Jake looked around the table one more time. These people, human and alien alike, were all that remained of the greatest friendship in galactic history. The Kronak had tried to end that friendship with violence. They had made a terrible mistake. The Kronak wanted to celebrate the death of humanity, Jake said, his voice as cold as the space between stars. We're going to make sure their celebration becomes their funeral. The New Horizon changed course, heading toward Kronak space. Behind them, Earth's grave grew smaller and smaller. Ahead of them lay 9 months of preparation for a vengeance that would echo through the galaxy for generations. The Kronak Empire had no idea that their victims' best friends were coming for them. They had no idea that love could be more dangerous than any weapon ever built. They were about to learn. 2 years had passed since Earth died. The New Horizon was no longer the same ship that had carried diplomats and scientists to make friends among the stars. Ben Clark had rebuilt it from the inside out, turning it into something that could slip through space like a shadow. The crew had changed even more than their ship. Jake Morrison moved through the corridors like a predator, his eyes cold and calculating. His hair had gone gray at the temples, and he rarely smiled. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 8 billion graves. Ryan Hayes had become something between a soldier and a ghost. He could move through enemy installations without making a sound, leaving death in his wake. His military training had evolved into something darker and more precise. Dr. Lisa Barnes no longer looked like a scientist. Her hands were stained with chemicals that could kill entire planets, and her eyes held knowledge that would have horrified her younger self. She had become Earth's angel of death, creating weapons that would make the Kronak wish they had never been born. Amy Parker spent her days deep in Kronak computer networks, spreading lies and fear with surgical precision. She could make Kronak commanders suspect their own shadows, turning their paranoid military culture against itself. The three Vashti had undergone the most dramatic change. Melody of Stars, Current of Joy, and Depth Singer no longer showed the bright, peaceful colors of their youth. Their skin had darkened to deep blues and purples, colors that meant they had embraced the dark song their ancestors had only whispered about in stories. Their first target had been a Kronak research station in the outer rim of their empire. The station was where human prisoners had been tortured for information before Earth's final destruction. Jake had insisted on leading the assault personally. The Kronak guards never saw him coming. Jake moved through the station's corridors like death itself, using weapons that made no sound and left no trace. When the station's security forces arrived to investigate the silence, they found empty rooms and a message written in human blood on the commander's office wall. Earth remembers. The message spread through Kronak military channels like wildfire. Who could have written it? All humans were dead. But there was the evidence, written in human genetic material that their scientists confirmed was real. Dr. Barnes had struck next, targeting a Kronak military academy, where young officers learned to wage war against inferior species. Her bioweapon was a masterpiece of controlled cruelty. The virus she released caused excruciating pain in every nerve but never killed its victims. For 3 weeks, an entire graduating class of Kronak warriors writhed in agony, screaming for death that would not come. When the pain finally ended, they were left alive but forever changed, their minds broken by the memory of suffering beyond imagination. The Academy's medical staff found another message, this one carved into the Academy's main computer. This is what Earth's children felt when you murdered them. Ben Clark's sabotage was more subtle but equally devastating. He infiltrated Kronak shipyards and planted devices that would cause their newest warships to suffer cascading system failures during their maiden voyages. Entire fleets found themselves stranded in deep space when their engines shut down. Their life support systems failed and their communications went silent. When rescue ships finally reached them weeks later, they found crews driven mad by isolation and fear, babbling about voices in the walls that whispered Earth's name. The Vashti proved terrifyingly effective at psychological warfare. Current of Joy used her people's harmonic abilities to broadcast sounds that drove Kronak soldiers insane. The frequencies were perfectly tuned to disrupt Kronak brain patterns, causing nightmares, hallucinations, and complete mental breakdowns. Depth Singer discovered that certain sound patterns could actually shatter Kronak exoskeletons from the inside out. Kronak military units would be found dead in perfect formation, their bodies broken by frequencies that turned their own bones against them. Melody of Stars specialized in a different kind of horror. She could create harmonics that made Kronak hear the voices of the dead. Kronak officers would suddenly hear human children crying for their mothers, human lovers calling out final words of devotion, human artists singing songs that would never be completed. Amy Parker's information warfare was perhaps the most effective of all. She planted evidence in Kronak military databases suggesting that various commanders were plotting against each other. In a culture built on suspicion and paranoia, these false clues spread like poison. Kronak generals began arresting their own officers on charges of treason. Military units turned on each other, convinced that their comrades were traitors. The Empire's own security apparatus began to consume itself from within. Each strike was surgical, precise, and completely untraceable. The attacks came from nowhere and vanished like smoke. The Kronak military began to call their tormentor the Ghost of Earth, never suspecting that 6 beings in a single modified ship could wage such effective warfare against an entire empire. Kronak. Soldiers started refusing assignments to remote outposts. Officers requested transfers away from any facility that had been attacked. The Empire's military efficiency dropped by 30% as fear spread through their ranks like a plague. "Something is hunting us," one Kronak general reported to his superiors. "Something that knows our weaknesses, our fears, our guilty secrets. It strikes without warning and leaves only death and madness behind." The Kronak High Command tried to maintain order, but even they were beginning to crack under the psychological pressure. Reports came in daily of impossible attacks, of facilities destroyed by weapons that left no trace, of entire units found, dead or insane with messages about Earth carved into the walls around them. "We killed them all," the Kronak Supreme Commander insisted during an emergency meeting. "Every human world is ash. Every human ship is destroyed. There are no survivors." But the evidence said otherwise. Human genetic material at crime scenes. Human writing in human languages. References to human culture and human pain. Somehow, impossibly, Earth's children were still alive, and they were very, very angry. Jake Morrison sat in his modified captain's chair, reading the latest intelligence. Reports that Amy had gathered from Kronak communications. Fear was spreading through their empire like a virus. Military units were requesting reinforcements. Planets were asking for additional security. The Kronak were starting to jump at shadows. "How many more targets before the celebration?" he asked. 17. "Major strikes," Ryan reported. "We've hit 63 facilities so far, each one more devastating than the last." Lisa Barnes looked up from her laboratory where she was preparing something special for the Kronak homeworld. "The bioweapon is almost ready. 1 more month of testing and refinement." "The ship modifications are complete," Ben added. "We can penetrate their deepest security now. They'll never see us coming." Current of Joy sang a soft melody that made the ship's hull vibrate with barely contained power. "The dark song grows stronger with each note we add to it. Soon it will be ready for its final performance." Amy pulled up a display showing the Kronak homeworld. Their celebration is in 4 months. They're still planning to go ahead with it despite all the attacks. They think their homeworld is too well defended for the Ghost of Earth to reach. Jake smiled for the first time in months, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Let them think that. Let them gather all their leaders in one place. Let them feel safe and confident." He stood up and walked to the viewing window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kronak were trying to sleep despite the nightmares that plagued them. Somewhere out there, they were checking their locks and looking over their shoulders, wondering when the Ghost of Earth would come for them next. "They wanted to celebrate the destruction of our friends," Jake said quietly. "We're going to give them a celebration they'll never forget." The New Horizon continued its silent journey through space, carrying 6 beings who had become something the galaxy had never seen before. They were no longer human and Vashti. They were something new, something born from love and forged in the fire of absolute loss. They were Earth's vengeance, and they were almost ready to complete their terrible song. The Kronak homeworld of Koraketh hung in space like a massive fortress. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like deadly jewels, their weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. Patrol ships moved in perfect formations, scanning space for any sign of the Ghost of Earth that had terrorized their empire for 2 years. But the New Horizon passed through their defenses like smoke through a screen. Ben Clark's modifications had made the ship invisible to their sensors, while stolen Kronak identification codes convinced their computers that it was just another celebration transport bringing guests to the Victory Festival. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching the planet grow larger on the screen. The surface was covered with massive cities built from black stone and metal. In the largest city, Carnmore, 50 million Kronak had gathered to celebrate the greatest victory in their history, the complete destruction of humanity. "Are we ready?" Jake asked his crew. Dr. Lisa Barnes nodded from her science station. "The bioweapon is loaded into the atmospheric processors. Once released, it will spread across the entire planet within 6 hours." Amy Parker checked her communication systems one last time. "I have control of every satellite and transmission array in the system. When you give the word, I can broadcast to the entire galaxy." Ryan Hayes confirmed the placement of the quantum charges. "The devices are ready. They won't destroy the planet, but they'll transform it into something the galaxy will never forget." The three Vashti stood together, their skin glowing with colors darker than deep space. They had spent weeks preparing for this moment, combining their voices into something that would carry their message across the stars. "The dark song is ready," Melody of Stars said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the ship's walls vibrate. "Every species in the galaxy will hear what we sing today." On the planet below, the celebration was reaching its peak. Giant screens throughout Carnmore showed footage of Earth's destruction, playing the final moments of human civilization over and over again for the entertainment of the crowds. Kronak leaders gave speeches about the glory of wiping out the weak human species. In the center of the city, a massive monument had been built from the melted remains of human ships. Kronak children played games where they pretended to kill humans. Vendors sold souvenirs made from human artifacts stolen from Earth before its destruction. Jake watched it all through the ship's sensors, his face carved from stone. Around him, his crew prepared for the moment they had worked toward for 2 long years. "It's time," Jake said quietly. Amy Parker activated every communication system on the planet. Suddenly, every screen in Carnmore went black. Every radio fell silent. Then slowly, an image appeared on every display in the city, on every communication device in the Kronak Empire, on every information network in the galaxy. It was the face of Captain Jake Morrison, broadcasting from the bridge of the New Horizon. Behind him stood his crew, human and Vashti together, their eyes filled with the cold fire of absolute justice. When Jake spoke, his voice was heard by every intelligent species in the galaxy. His words were translated into 1,000 languages by systems Amy had prepared months in advance. "People of the galaxy," Jake began, his voice calm and terrible. "My name is Jake Morrison. I am one of the last humans alive. 2 years ago, the Kronak Empire murdered my entire species. 8 billion men, women, and children burned to death for the crime of existing. On the planet below, 50 million Kronak stared at their screens in shock. The ghost of Earth had a face now, and it was speaking to them directly from somewhere above their heads. The Kronak destroyed our friends," Jake continued. "They turned genocide into entertainment. They celebrated the death of children. They made trophies from the ashes of our world." The camera pulled back to show the three Vashti standing beside the human crew. "These are our friends. The Vashti came to Earth in peace, seeking to build bridges between our species. Instead, they found only graves. But friendship does not die with death. Love does not end with murder." Jake's voice grew colder, harder. "You made the mistake of leaving some of us alive to remember. This is Earth's answer to your celebration." Dr. Barnes activated her weapon. High above Koraketh, invisible containers opened and released their contents into the planet's atmosphere. The bioweapons spread like morning mist, touching every Kronak on the surface within minutes. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the Kronak in the celebration began to scream. The weapon Lisa had created was not designed to kill quickly. Instead, it made every infected Kronak experience the last moments of every human who had died during Earth's destruction. 50 million Kronak suddenly felt the terror of 8 billion humans facing death. They experienced the fear of children calling for parents who could not save them. They felt the agony of lovers dying in each other's arms. They lived through the despair of artists watching their life's work burn. They endured the rage of soldiers who fought hopeless battles against impossible odds. All of it at once. All of it forever burned into their minds. The Kronak commanders who had ordered the attacks felt it worst of all. They experienced every death they had caused, every life they had ended, every dream they had destroyed. Their minds shattered under the weight of 8 billion final moments. As the Kronak writhed in agony, Ryan Hayes activated the quantum charges hidden throughout the planet's crust. The devices triggered a reaction that transformed Koraketh's surface into living crystal, preserving the Kronak in their moment of realization for all eternity. The planet became a monument of crystallized suffering, where the Kronak would remain, forever conscious, forever experiencing the pain they had caused, unable to die but forced to remember what they had done. But the Vashti had prepared something even more powerful than weapons or monuments. The three aliens joined their voices in a song that broadcast across subspace to every corner of the galaxy. It was a song of mourning for humanity, of love for friendship, and of warning to any species that might consider following the Kronak's path. The song carried the harmonics to shatter any Kronak ships trying to escape the system, but more importantly, it carried a message that would echo through the galaxy for generations. The song told the story of Earth's friendship with the Vashti, of the beautiful culture that had been destroyed, of the dreams that had been burned away. It spoke of love that transcended species, of bonds that death could not break, of justice that would always find a way. As the crystal planet Koraketh took its final form, Jake broadcast one last message to the galaxy. Earth had friends, he said, his voice carrying across space to every inhabited world. Earth taught love. Earth showed the universe that different species could live in harmony. The Kronak destroyed that gift. Remember Koraketh, and remember the price of making humanity's friends weep. The New Horizon turned away from the crystal tomb that had once been the Kronak homeworld. Behind them, the planet hung in space like a frozen scream, a permanent reminder of what happened when friendship was betrayed. The ship set course for the edge of the galaxy, carrying the last humans and their alien friends toward unexplored space. They had genetic samples and cultural records needed to eventually restore both their species, but they also carried something more valuable. They carried the knowledge that friendship was sacred, that love could transcend any barrier, and that some bonds were worth any price to defend. Years later, when new species achieved space travel and made their first contact with other civilizations, they would approach with reverence and caution. They had all heard the Song of Koraketh, all seen the crystal planet that stood as an eternal warning. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Friendship was not weakness. Love was not foolishness. And those who destroyed either would face consequences beyond imagination. Earth's children were gone, but Earth's justice was forever. And in the deep spaces between the stars, the song of the Vashti still echoed its message to any who would listen. Some bonds transcend species, some loves transcend death, some vengeance transcends time. The last humans and their friends disappeared into the unknown, carrying with them the seeds of new worlds and the memory of old ones. Behind them, they left a galaxy that would never again mistake kindness for weakness or friendship for something that could be safely destroyed. The celebration was over. The lesson had begun.